The champagne glass hadn't even touched my lips when my daughter-in-law grabbed my wrist and told me I had 10 seconds to hand over the deed to my cottage. She didn't whisper it. She said it loud enough that the string quartet stopped mid-bow, and every head at the reception turned to watch. When I pulled my arm free and said no, she slapped me so hard my hearing aid popped out and skidded across the floor of the Fairmont Royal York. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't swing back. I picked up that hearing aid, wiped it on my sleeve, and walked out into the November wind on Front Street. I sat in my truck and made one phone call. 20 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up to the hotel entrance, and a woman stepped out who my son hadn't seen in 6 years. When he realized who she was, the blood left his face so fast I thought he was going to pass out right there on the dance floor. But I need to back up. My name is Graham Lockhart. I'm 67 years old, and I spent 41 years pouring concrete, framing walls, and running job sites across southern Ontario. I started Lockhart Construction when I was 26 with a used pickup truck and a line of credit my father co-signed at the CIBC in Barrie. By the time I stepped back 5 years ago, we had 130 employees and contracts from Muskoka to Niagara. My wife Dorothy and I bought the cottage on Lake Rousseau in 1994. It was a wreck when we found it. Mice in the walls, dock half sunk, roof that leaked every spring. We rebuilt it together over 15 summers. Dorothy sanded every floor by hand. She picked the field stone for the fireplace from a farmer's pile off Highway 11. That cottage was our place. It's where our son Tyler took his first steps. It's where Dorothy and I sat on the dock every August, watching the loons and saying nothing because we didn't need to. She died 3 years ago, pancreatic cancer, 8 weeks from diagnosis to funeral. I kept the cottage exactly as she left it. Her rubber boots by the back door, her stack of Margaret Atwood novels on the nightstand, the jar of beach glass she collected over 20 years sitting on the kitchen windowsill. I couldn't change it. Changing it meant accepting she was really gone, and I wasn't ready for that. Tyler is my only child. He's 34. He met Megan Poria at a networking event in Toronto 2 years after his mother passed. Megan is 29. She sells luxury condos in Yorkville. She drives a white BMW that Tyler leases for her. She has opinions about everything and experience in nothing. The first time she came to the cottage, she wrinkled her nose and asked why there wasn't air conditioning. She looked at Dorothy's books and said, "You should really clear out this clutter, Graham. It's depressing." She called my dead wife's belongings clutter. I paid for the wedding bisque tea. Every cent. The venue at the Fairmont was $92,000. The flowers, white peonies flown in from British Columbia, were $11,000. The dress was a custom piece from a designer on Queen Street West that cost more than my first house in Aurelia. The catering, the open bar, the DJ, the photographer, the videographer, the hotel block for out-of-town guests. All told, I wrote checks totaling $180,000. In Canadian dollars, that is real money. That's a lifetime of 5 a.m., starts and concrete dust in my lungs. I did it because Dorothy would have wanted Tyler to have a beautiful day. I did it because he's my son, and I loved him. Past tense is something I'm still getting used to. The reception was in full swing. 300 guests, half of whom I'd never met. Megan's side of the family had multiplied like rabbits once they heard the Lockhart name was attached to the check. I was standing by the bar, holding a glass of champagne that tasted like sparkling vinegar to me. I'm a rye and ginger man. Always have been. But you drink champagne at weddings, because that's what you do. Megan came toward me. She wasn't walking like a bride. She was walking like a woman on a mission, heels hammering the marble, jaw set, eyes locked on me like I was a contractor who'd missed a deadline. She grabbed my wrist. Her acrylic nails dug into the skin hard enough to leave marks I'd still see the next morning. "Graham, I need the deed to the Muskoka cottage," she said. Her voice was flat, transactional. "Tyler and I are going to use it as our primary summer residence. My parents want to stay there this weekend to get it set up. Give me the keys and tell me where you keep the ownership papers." I stared at her. I thought maybe I'd misheard. The band was loud. "That's my home, Megan," I said. "I live there half the year. Dorothy and I built it together." She rolled her eyes. Actually rolled her eyes at me, the way you'd roll your eyes at a child who won't eat his peas. "Dorothy is gone, Graham. She's been gone for 3 years. You're a 67-year-old man living alone in a cottage with no cell service, courting a dead woman's rubber boots. It's sad. Tyler and I have discussed it. You'd be much better off in a retirement community. There's a nice one in Gravenhurst. They have shuffleboard. 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 She wanted to park me in a home so she could redecorate my cottage and fill it with her friends every long weekend." I pulled my wrist free. "No," I said. "And don't talk about my wife like that." That's when she hit me. Open palm, full force, right across my left cheek. The sound cracked through the ballroom like a gunshot. My hearing aid flew out. 300 people went silent. The string quartet stopped. A waiter dropped a tray of canapes. For about 5 seconds, the only sound in that room was the ringing in my ear. I looked for Tyler. He was pushing through the crowd, and for one desperate second, I thought he was coming to defend me. My boy. My son. He'd see the red mark on my face, and he'd be furious at the woman who put it there. He reached us, grabbed Megan's shoulders, and looked at me. Not at my cheek. At me. With annoyance. "Dad, seriously? You couldn't just say yes? She's been planning this for months. You know how stressed she is. Why do you always have to make everything about you?" Something broke inside me. Not my heart. Something deeper. The part of me that had been a father for 34 years just went quiet. "She hid me, Tyler." "She's overwhelmed, Dad. It's her wedding day. Just give her the keys and we'll talk about it tomorrow." I looked at him. I looked at the tuxedo I'd paid for, the cufflinks I'd given him for his 30th birthday, the watch on his wrist that had been Dorothy's final Christmas gift to him. He was wearing my money and my dead wife's love, and he was telling me to hand over my home to keep the peace. I set the champagne down on the nearest table. I didn't slam it. I placed it gently the way you set down something you're finished with forever. "I'm done," I said. "Done with what?" Tyler asked, frowning. I didn't answer. I turned around and walked through 300 people who parted like I was contagious. I could hear Megan behind me, loud enough for everyone. "Don't worry, everyone. He gets confused. It's his age. He'll be fine in the morning." I heard Tyler laugh along with her, and that laugh will stay in my chest like a stone for the rest of my life. I walked down through the lobby, past the doormen, into the November cold on Front Street. The wind off Lake Ontario hit me, and I welcomed it. At least the cold was honest. I got into my truck, a 2019 F-150 with 200,000 kilometers on it, and I sat there with the engine running and my hands shaking on the wheel. The heater blew warm air that smelled like coffee and sawdust, the way my trucks have always smelled. It was the most comforting thing I'd felt all night. I pulled out my phone and called a number I hadn't dialed in 6 years. It rang twice. A woman answered. "Graham, it's Saturday night." "Judith, I need you." Silence. Then, "Is it Tyler?" She always knew. Judith Ng had been my company's chief legal counsel for 22 years. She retired the same year I did, but retirement for Judith meant she only worked 60 hours a week instead of 80. She was the one who'd built the legal framework that protected Lockhart Construction through 2 recessions, a lawsuit from a subcontractor in Hamilton, and a tax audit that lasted 14 months. Tyler called her the dragon behind her back. Megan refused to be in the same room with her. "All of them," I said. "Judith, do you remember what we set up after Dorothy's funeral? The protection clause and the family trust?" The typing sound on her end stopped. "I have the file open. I pulled it up when I saw your name on the call display. Graham, are you asking me to execute it?" "Yes. You understand what this does? It freezes every account, every card, every asset tied to the trust. Tyler's salary, his company car, the condo on King Street that's in the corporate name. It revokes his signing authority. All of it gone in 15 minutes. Do it. Did they hurt you? I touched my cheek. It was hot and swollen. She slapped me, in front of everyone. And my son told me to give her what she wanted. There was a long pause. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I'm bringing the documents and a security team. Do not go back inside without me. The line went dead. I sat in the truck and stared at the hotel entrance. They were still in there, dancing, drinking wine I'd paid for, eating lobster I'd paid for, laughing at the senile old man who'd wandered off into the cold. While I waited, I opened the security app on my phone. I'd installed cameras at the cottage last year after a break-in scare. The feed loaded. My stomach dropped. The cottage wasn't empty. Every light was on. I could see people moving through the living room. I zoomed in and recognized them immediately. Carl and Diane Poirier, Megan's parents, and her brother Shane. They were already inside. Tyler must have given them the door code. Carl was at the kitchen counter, opening a bottle of my 25-year Lot 40 rye. A bottle I'd been saving since Dorothy and I bought it on our last anniversary trip to the distillery in Grimsby. He poured it into a coffee mug like it was Tim Hortons drip coffee. I switched to the bedroom camera. Diane was in the closet. Dorothy's closet. She was pulling clothes off hangers and throwing them into garbage bags. She held up Dorothy's red wool coat, the one I'd bought her at a shop in Stratford the winter before she got sick. She tried it on, turning in front of the mirror. "Look at this, Carl," she called out. "Real wool. Must be worth something. I can't believe he kept all this junk. The woman's been dead for years." I switched to the study. Shane was at my desk, going through drawers. He found the lockbox where I keep cash for emergencies. He was trying to pry it open with a screwdriver from the garage. Inside that box was $3,000, and the gold pocket watch my father carried for 50 years. The watch he gave me the day I got my contractor's license, the day he told me he was proud of me. I hit record. I saved everything to the cloud and forwarded copies to Judith's secure server. My phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. "Dad, stop being dramatic. Come back inside. We need to discuss the cottage situation like adults." I didn't reply. Headlights swept across the parking lot. A black sedan and a gray SUV pulled up to the hotel entrance. The doors opened and Judith stepped out. She was 61, 5'3", and she moved like a woman who had never lost an argument in her life. She wore a dark navy suit and carried a leather binder thick enough to stop a bullet. Behind her came 2 associates from her firm and 4 private security contractors, large men in dark coats who scanned the perimeter with the calm efficiency of people who'd done this before. She saw my truck and walked straight to me. Her eyes went to my cheek. Her jaw tightened. "You look terrible," she said. "I feel awake," I told her. She handed me the binder. Emergency court order. I called Justice Okafor at home. Once I showed her the evidence of the unauthorized transfers, she signed it electronically. "We have authority to freeze everything, seize company assets, and initiate eviction from all corporate properties." The cottage. I called the OPP detachment in Bracebridge. They're en route. Criminal trespass and theft under $5,000 for starters. If your security footage shows what I think it shows, we'll add break and enter. I held the binder. It felt like 41 years of hard work compressed into paper and leather. "Let's go," I said. We walked into the Fairmont. Our footsteps echoed across the marble lobby. Guests milling around with drinks stepped aside when they saw the security team. We didn't slow down. We headed straight for the ballroom doors. I nodded to the 2 largest men. They pushed the doors open. The music was still playing. Megan was on the stage with a microphone, laughing, telling some story about how Graham was a sweetheart, but, he's getting on. Tyler was beside her, nodding, holding a glass of champagne, performing the role of the dutiful husband who was sorry about his difficult father. The drummer saw us first. He stopped playing. then the bassist, then the whole band went silent. Megan frowned. Why'd the music stop? 300 heads turned toward the entrance, and there I was. Not a sad old man, not a confused retiree. I was standing at the front of a legal team with a court order in my hands, and the coldest expression I'd worn since I fired a foreman for stealing copper wire off a job site in 1997. Judith walked past me. She didn't acknowledge Tyler, didn't look at the guests. She walked straight to the stage, climbed the stairs, and took the microphone from Megan's hand. Megan was too shocked to resist. Nobody resists Judith. It's like trying to argue with a glacier. Judith faced the room. Good evening. My name is Judith Ng. I am the Chief Legal Counsel for the Lockhart Family Trust and the executor of the Lockhart estate assets. I apologize for the interruption. She opened the binder. As of 12 minutes ago, all corporate accounts associated with Tyler Lockhart and Megan Poirier have been frozen by emergency court order. The credit cards used to secure this venue have been canceled. The payment to the Fairmont for tonight's reception has been reversed. She looked at the hotel manager, who had gone white as a sheet. Sir, the check for this event is no longer valid. Unless someone in this room has $180,000 on a personal card, I suggest you begin closing the bar. Tyler pushed through the crowd, screaming, Dad, what is this? You can't do this. I'm your son. This is my wedding. The security team stepped between us. Tyler bounced off them like a tennis ball hitting a wall. Judith continued, Mr. Lockhart's employment with Lockhart Construction is terminated effective immediately for cause, including unauthorized use of corporate funds for personal expenses, fraudulent vendor payments to a shell company registered to Carl Poirier, and conspiracy to defraud the family trust. The BMW registered in the corporate name is being repossessed as we speak. I watched Tyler's face change. The arrogance drained out of it like water out of a cracked bathtub. Judith tapped her tablet. The projector screen behind the stage lit up. It showed the security footage from the cottage. Carl Poirier drinking my anniversary rye. Diane Poirier throwing Dorothy's clothes into garbage bags, wearing her red coat, laughing about how it was good that she was dead. Shane trying to break into my lockbox. 300 people watched in absolute silence. Then the feed switched to a live shot. OPP cruisers in the driveway, officers at the door. Carl being walked out in handcuffs, still wearing the coffee mug's worth of rye on his shirt. Diane screaming that her daughter owned this property, that this was a misunderstanding, that they'd sue. Shane face down on the front porch, the pocket watch he'd pried from the box lying on the ground beside him. Megan let out a sound that wasn't quite a scream, and wasn't quite a sob. It was the sound of a woman watching her parents being arrested in real time on a 20-foot screen in front of 300 people. She turned on Tyler. You told me you owned the company. You told me the old man was just a figurehead. You told me we had nothing to worry about. Tyler was shaking. Baby, it's fine. We'll fix this. We'll sue. We'll what money? She was screaming now. You don't have money. You never had money. Your father had money, and you just lost it. She grabbed her left hand and started twisting the ring. The diamond I'd paid for. She wrenched it off and threw it at Tyler. It hit him in the chest and bounced across the dance floor, spinning under a table. I'm done, she said. She kicked off her heels, gathered her dress, and ran out barefoot through the double doors into the lobby. Tyler stood in the middle of the empty dance floor. The caterers had stopped serving. The bartenders had closed the taps. Guests were putting on their coats, filing out in awkward silence. He looked at me from across the room. His face was wet. He sank to his knees on the marble floor. Dad, please, I didn't mean any of it. She made me do it. I'm your son. I looked at him. I saw the boy who used to sit on my lap in the truck while I drove between job sites. I saw the kid who built a birdhouse with me in the garage and gave it to Dorothy for Mother's Day. I saw the teenager who told me he wanted to be just like me when he grew up, and then I saw the man who had watched his wife slap me and told me I deserved it, the man who had planned to have me declared incompetent, the man who had called a retirement home in Gravenhurst and asked about availability, The man who had funneled $58,000 of my company's money to his in-laws through a fake consulting company while telling me he appreciated everything I'd done. "You weren't tricked, Tyler," I said. My voice was quiet, but in that empty room it carried. "You made choices, every single one. You chose to see me as an obstacle instead of your father. You chose her, comfort over my dignity. And you chose to do it with money that wasn't yours." He reached for the hem of my jacket. I stepped back. "I can forgive a mistake," I said. "I've made plenty, but I can't forgive someone who looked me in the eye and planned to take everything from me while pretending to love me. That's not a mistake, that's a character." I turned away from him. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than pouring a foundation in January. Harder than burying Dorothy. Judith fell into step beside me. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. We walked out of the ballroom, through the lobby, and into the November night. The cold hit me and I breathed it in. It smelled like Lake Ontario and exhaust and freedom. A week later, I was sitting in a diner on Bayfield Street in Barrie, eating a club sandwich and drinking coffee. Judith sat across from me with a blue folder. Carl and Diane Poirier had been charged with break-and-enter and theft. Shane was facing additional charges for possession of burglary tools. They'd been released on bail but barred from coming within 500 meters of the cottage. Their house in Scarborough would likely need to be sold to cover legal fees. Tyler was sleeping on a friend's couch in Leslieville. He'd started working at a renovation company in the East End, carrying drywall sheets up stairwells for $22 an hour. My private investigator sent me a photo of him on a job site in his work boots, covered in dust, holding a tape measure. He looked exhausted. He also looked, for the first time in years, like someone doing an honest day's work. Megan had filed for annulment within 72 hours of the wedding. She'd already been seen at a restaurant in Yorkville with a commercial real estate developer, 15 years her senior. Judith slid the folder across the table. "The foundation papers. Everything set up. The Board of Trustees is confirmed. Just needs your signature." I opened it. The cover page read, "The Dorothy Lockhart Trade Scholarship Fund." The money that was supposed to be Tyler's inheritance, every dollar, was going to fund apprenticeships for young people who wanted to learn a trade. Plumbing, electrical, carpentry, welding, kids from small towns and rough neighborhoods who had the work ethic but not the tuition. Kids like I used to be. I signed it. The pen didn't hesitate. "She would have loved this," Judith said quietly. "She would have done it years ago," I said. "She was always smarter than me." I looked out the window at the gray November sky over Barrie. The trees were bare. The sidewalks were wet. A kid in a high-vis vest was loading lumber into a pickup truck across the street, and I watched him work, lifting each board with care, stacking them properly, the way someone taught him to do it right. I'm 67 years old. Most men my age are winding down, but sitting in that diner, with the scholarship paper signed and my cottage waiting for me up north, with Dorothy's boots still by the door and her beach glass still catching the light on the windowsill, I didn't feel like a man at the end of anything. Sometimes you have to let your child hit the ground to find out if they can stand up on their own. Sometimes the most loving thing a father can do is close his wallet and open the door. And sometimes, to find out who you really are after 67 years on this earth, you have to be brave enough to let go of the person you love the most and trust that the life you built with your own hands was worth something all along. I finished my coffee, left a good tip, and drove north toward the lake.